The federal government's inability to, obviously, as we saw over the weekend, protect American citizens leads us to believe that perhaps at the state level we would have a much better approach to taking care of our own affairs. Speaking of that, I had a chance to speak, well, yeah, redundant there, with Congressman Raul Labrador this morning just before the show. And he is on his way to committee today introducing a bill that would increase land ownership in the state of Idaho, that is, state ownership versus federal ownership. Take a listen.
Well, I'm actually going to committee in just a few minutes, and we're working on the Self-Sufficient Community Lands Act, which is my forest bill that allows Idaho and other states to take management control of certain parts of our federal land. It's a pilot project right now. That's what my bill does, but it's to show that Idaho can actually manage and control the federal lands better, more efficiently, and keep the forest healthier than the federal government.
Are you getting any support from across the aisle as well, at least from some of the delegation in the Northwest?
You know, some of the delegation is saying that they like the concept of what I'm doing. I'm not sure that they're going to support it. Last time that it passed the House, it did get bipartisan support, but it was a larger. What they did is they took my bill and they attached it to a larger forest health bill, um, lands bill. So I think it's getting some bipartisan support. There is a lot of opposition because people are saying some terrible things about the bill that are not true. They're saying that we're going to sell the land once we start managing, and that's one of the things the bill does. It doesn't take ownership of the land. It actually takes only management of the land. It allows us to use the environmental laws that we have to follow on state lands. In essence, what it does is it lets us manage our federal lands like we manage the state lands. And if you look at the forest in Idaho, the state lands are actually pretty healthy. We get to use revenues from those lands. We get to use the natural resources, and we still keep it healthier than the federal government keeps their lands. So it's a win-win for the community. It's a win-win for those who want to have access to the forest, and it's a win-win for the cities and the counties that they're tired of coming here to Washington D.C. and begging for money. They say we don't need to come to Washington D.C. asking for PILT money and other monies if we can actually use our lands in our counties.
You know, bringing that up, the argument I've often heard on the air with callers is that just because someone is a well-educated bureaucrat in Washington doesn't mean that they're any smarter than someone managing lands in Idaho.
Absolutely. And it's not only that they're not any smart, but they're definitely not going to care about the lands in Idaho as we care about the lands in Idaho. We want those lands to be fertile. We want those lands to be prosperous. We want those lands to grow. We want it to be beautiful. We have almost a selfish interest in making sure that these projects work because it's our land. We have to look at it. We have to live with it. Some bureaucrat at a desk, it doesn't matter if they are smarter than we are. They're not, but let's assume that they are. They're not going to care about the land like we care about the land.
Um, the other day, I guess, it might have been yesterday, I was reading, though, that there's an effort to try and have Idaho sell some state land to the federal government to expand the Teton forest. So it does seem that people are working in some cases, perhaps at cross purposes.
There's a movement in some circles in Idaho to actually expand on the federal lands, and I have always opposed that. I think it's wrong. We have over 60% of the lands in the state of Idaho are owned by the federal government. And we need to take back those lands. We need to be able to work on those lands. We need to be able to use the natural resources. I always love when liberals say that Idaho takes more federal money per capita than blue states in the east. Well, guess what? Blue states in the east don't have 65% of the land owned by the federal government. In fact, if you look right now, I think it's Massachusetts, where there was a movement to actually just give some state land to the federal government. I think it was 1% of the land. I can't remember the exact number. And people are up in arms in Massachusetts because, they did not want the federal government to control those lands. And what about Massachusetts? Less than 1% of their land is owned by the federal government. So, of course, Massachusetts is going to require less aid from the federal government because they can use 100% of the lands when it comes to natural resources, when it comes to all these different issues that we're worried about. So our cities and our counties, especially in the rural areas, in my district, all the way up through the Panhandle, all the way to the north, they're suffering. There's people that are unemployed. There's people that are underemployed because we're not able to use our lands for mining, for timber, to use the raw natural resources that God has given us. And we can really do better. And that's why I'm excited about this bill.
We got more coming up with Congressman Labrador in the next hour of the program, and he's going to be addressing just after 9 o'clock this morning the comments, in fact, we just heard from the president a short while ago about why he doesn't have to say the words radical Islam. And let's just say Congressman Labrador does not agree. And also, we'll share some comments from U.S. Senator Jim Risch made on CNN's The Situation Room this week as well about the same topic. That's coming up in the following hour. But in the meantime, between 8:30 and 9 o'clock this morning, Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine right here on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com.